Our first reading has this awesome story about the man who would become King David and his mentor, but also his eventual, in this story we find David's king, Saul, hunting him down, right? Saul and his men, there's this sort of encampment. They're all out looking for David to kill him, right? They're looking for David to kill him. Saul's heart had been hardened. He feared his successor, as it seems like so many kings throughout history have done, and so he was hunting David down to kill him. David is on the run. David is in hiding. But what happens in the story today in the first reading is that David and one of his compatriots, another person who was kind of keeping him company and helping him as he's fleeing Saul, David and his friend are able to work their way through the grace of God, are able to sneak into the camp of the people who are trying to kill them. And they are able to get into the tent of Saul, the king, who's heading the whole thing up. And David's friend turns to him. They're all sleeping. The king is asleep. And David's friend turns to him and says, "Lord, this is it. This is it right here. You just take this sword, kill Saul, and we don't have to run anymore. We don't have to hide." Right? And David says, "No, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to take this sword and we're going to take another artifact from the tent, and then we're going to go back over to the other side of the valley, and then we're going to yell and wake them all up and say, 'Look, we could have killed Saul, but we didn't.'" And that's what happens. That's the end of the story today in the first reading. But as the story goes on, that happens. David yells over into camp. And what happens is Saul immediately repents and recognizes the errors of his way. Right? Now, what I want us to think about, we hear this gospel then today. If we fast forward to that, Jesus says this, right? Love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. Love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. And I think we hear that so much that we kind of look for, we're not sure it's so broad, love your enemies, right? We're like, yeah, that's great. But how? Right? How? And I think that first reading is a great indication and is a great, real practical example. Nobody is probably hunting us to put us to death. But what I want us to think about is that I feel like for a lot of us, the people that are our enemies, who are in some sense attacking us, or who are coming after us, who are making our life hard, who are persecuting us, whatever it might be, our enemies are people that a lot of times we are provided with an opportunity like David to destroy them, get some kind of revenge. Obviously not to kill them, as in the first reading, but to do something to destroy their reputation, to get revenge for what they've done to you, to make their life hard, to drive the sword into them, metaphorically speaking. Our enemies sometimes are people who come across, and we are presented with those opportunities to do that back to them. And what I want us to think about is I want us to think about those specific instances when the people who you would classify, when you hear the word Jesus say, love your enemies, the people whose faces pop up in your mind. And I want you to think about those opportunities that you either have now or will have in the future to get to pay them back, to get some kind of revenge, or at least to make them feel the pain that you have felt from them. And I want you to remember David. David didn't do it. David didn't drive the sword in. And I think that is a great example of what it means to love our enemies. Right? What it means to love our enemies. It says, Jesus says, do good to those who hate you. We live in a world that's almost predicated on revenge, eye for an eye, that kind of thing, justice, all those kind of things. And justice is a good thing, of course. But when we even take another step further beyond that, which is what Jesus is asking us to do, to take another step beyond what someone deserves, then that begins to be the kind of life that Christ is calling us. That is the word charity, the supernatural grace and gift that God gives us to love beyond what somebody is owed, beyond what somebody has done to us, to instead do good for them. Who are those people? And I invite you, if you get the opportunity to get revenge, to sheathe your sword, to put it away, to say, I will not take advantage of this opportunity. And maybe, like David and Saul, when your enemy sees you do that and instead choose the higher path, they too will be converted. Right? Maybe they'll be converted. Not everybody that sees supernatural charity on display is converted. Not everybody who saw Christ die on the cross was converted, but some who saw it were. And some who will see you doing good to those who hate you will be converted. And so we pray today to have the strength, I think, to imitate the young man who would become King David in those opportunities where we are confronted or have an opportunity to those who hate us. May we, like Christ, choose not revenge, but forgiveness and love.